Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome back to General Science, where today we are going to be talking about the water cycle. If my slideshow will pop up here. There we go. All right. So we're going to be talking about the water cycle. This will be our first kind of foray into environmental science. And so the water cycle is basically how scientists track the flow of water around the Earth. And we're going to follow that through and kind of see how that works. So let's get started. What exactly is the water cycle? I kind of basically explained it to you, but it's the process that water goes through in nature, right? It's how water travels from the atmosphere, falls back down to Earth, and then comes back up into the atmosphere. It's a cycle that water goes through. And this process is important because it maintains the Earth's ecosystem and diverse life. Our life on planet Earth is dependent on water for the most part. And so understanding how water cycles through nature is an important thing for us to understand, to have a better understanding of biology, but then also how our world works, which is kind of the environmental science aspect of it, why we're including it here. So the movement of water around the Earth has a wide range of effects. All plant life relies on water to produce the oxygen we breathe, and the water cycle also helps maintain ocean levels. So as climate change continues to affect glaciers and icebergs and stuff like that, the water cycle is itself being overwhelmed, and that's part of the environmental disaster we're looking at as climate change continues. Let's talk a little bit about the actual cycle itself. What is it? Well, it starts off, or we're going to start off with water in the oceans. You can technically start anywhere on the cycle, but we're going to start here. This is where I've decided we're going to start. So here we are. We've got the ocean. The water's there. We've got lots of it, 70% of the Earth. And as water sits on the surface of the Earth, the sun evaporates that water and becomes water vapor. So it's entering the atmosphere. So that's the second step of the water cycle. After that, that water vapor is eventually going to condense into clouds. That's what clouds are. It's just condensed water vapor. And there's so much of it that we can actually see it. So there we have, if you're looking at clouds, we've got just a bunch of water vapor. Now, as the water vapor continues to condense and condense, eventually it's going to get too much and it'll start to rain back down to Earth, as you see here in this overly dramatized picture that I found on the internet, right? Water is going to rain back down. And then water is going to get stored in various places. It might get stored in lakes, rivers, the ocean again, wherever else it falls down. It might get stored as snow or ice in mountains or in glaciers or in icebergs, right? Water can be stored in many places on our planet. It might become drinking water. It might end up coming into contact with people or animals or whatever. That's being stored elsewhere. Water is eventually going to run off from the different places where it is into many different areas, right? As you can see, water likes to kind of go where it wants to go. And eventually it might end up into what's called the groundwater, which is basically these underground cavities of water that's in the ground. This is the water that trees and plants get from the ground. As you can see, right, there's lots of different ways that it can be stored underground like that. And then eventually the water might end up returning to the oceans, through the groundwater, through runoff, whatever way. And then the cycle starts over again. So as you can see, right, water is traveling in this continuous cycle around the planet. And so here's a kind of a picture of it overall. As you can see, right, very circular. We started down here. It goes up. It comes down in condensation. And then it either goes into the ground or stays on top, and it streams back down, and eventually it finds itself back into the oceans or wherever, and it evaporates back up. So this cycle has continued on the planet for many, many, many years, and the issue that we're running into now is that parts of this cycle is being disturbed, which isn't great, right? So why does this matter? Well, determining how the water cycle goes through the environment can help researchers understand the ecosystems that we have on the planet, but it also can help us understand why we have water shortages and water scarcity in different places of the world. We all depend on this water to grow food for ourselves and for the animals that we eat, the plants that we need for oxygen. But, right, it's also a big part of the carbon cycle. And like I've said, part of this climate crisis we're facing, right? The water cycle can affect the carbon cycle because the flow of carbon through the atmosphere and the planet. The ocean absorbs CO2. And right now our water is being bombarded with carbon dioxide, making the water less safe. Lots of issues there. And like I said earlier, the melting of glaciers and ice caps and all that is affecting the water levels. It's changing the way that our water cycle is working. And it's going to have a lot of negative effects on us, especially as sea levels rise. So thank you for watching this brief overcap of the water cycle. Next episode, we are going to talk about the carbon cycle that I just talked about in that last little bit right there. We'll start going over the carbon cycle in more detail so you can understand what that is. And then we'll be almost done with our series. So I hope you've been enjoying it so far. And we'll be seeing you soon for some more general science. Adios, friends.